Jananam sukadham maranam karunam milanam maduram smaranam karunam kalavashadiha sakalam karunam samayadipate akilam karunam. Namaskaram. Namaskaram to everyone.
Greetings, everybody. I'm very lucky to be on the stage with Sadhguru. And what we have decided is that we will enlarge on some of the wonderful points that we have made in the inaugural session. And we'll also have a conversation on science and practice. And I will raise certain points where science has taken us, and then we'll have you speak to those points, and then we'll see where this conversation goes. So there's really no script. It's going to be a freewheeling.
I didn't realize this is a trap.
Okay, just to get started, we live in the age of science, and it is generally assumed that India is a civilization of religion, but that's really half the story. If you delve very deeply into Indian history and the Indian texts and the story of the sages, you discover that India is truly the civilization of science. And it's not only the mathematical and the medical sciences which eventually blossomed into modern science as we know it, where the foundations were laid in India, but the ultimate science of all, which modern science is confronting, because both in medicine, in physics, in neuroscience, the question of what consciousness is has come to the center stage. And modern science doesn't quite know what to do with it. And there's a crisis. For example, in physics, all the physical theories are based only on 4% of the observational universe. 96% is dark matter and dark energy, and nobody knows what that is. And that's where we would try to, lay out what India has to offer. Now, just to get started, because science has reached a dead end, there is a corresponding crisis in society, and we see that in the US, we see that in Europe. In the US, last year, 70,000 people died of opioid overdose, which is more than the number of deaths in all the years of the Vietnam War and the war in the Middle East. So why is this happening? These are young people in the prime of their life with young children. Why are they killing themselves? Because materialistic science has run its course. And there is great despair, because after you have lived through whatever sensory gratification you can have, you confront the question, who are you? And I think that's what Indian sciences, Vedas, Indian mysticism is all about. So with this, let me just, as background, so Sadhguru, please, address whatever question associated with this. You have the mic.
Oh, I thought you were going to. Yes, I thought you were going to ask me a question.
Oh, well. Okay, so, all right, let me ask you a question then. So what do you think, in what sense does Indian consciousness science or the tradition of the study of the Atman come in, which informs what modern science has achieved? And modern science has achieved amazing stuff. But where do we go from this point on? Where might further insights accrue so that the suggestion that was made that in some sense India is the Vishwa Guru would truly come to fruition?
I think that's a very grand idea. The moment we label consciousness as Indian, I think we have sabotaged it right there. Because consciousness cannot be Indian or American or whatever. When we talk about consciousness, we are talking about a dimension beyond physical nature. So geography or political identity or cultural identity cannot be put into it. Well, the significance of this culture is… I'm not speaking as out of my love for this nation, I'm just looking at it simply as it is. Nowhere… I've traveled everywhere and I've looked at various things. No culture has ever looked at the fundamental human mechanism with as much profoundness as this culture has. The depth and dimension which has been covered is fantastic. At the same time, it's very important. What's happening to the microphone? They're just editing whatever they don't like. We must understand, this is something I'm trying to do with all the people who have great love for this nation, over doing a few things. That is great spiritual experiences and enormous amount of insight into life, which this culture achieved. Today, unfortunately, has largely become a very complicated vocabulary, that people have words and words and words without the necessary experience, which is causing enormous damage to the possibility of… Well, you can be a lighthouse to direct people, but you cannot believe that you will run every ship on the planet. So, being a lighthouse means we must rise and shine. We should not bother about who is following us, who is not following us, whether our culture is growing, our consciousness is growing. No, no, no. If we rise and shine, if there is a light, people will come in that direction. I think we need to invest on that. We have not invested enough in the last few generations at all. All we have is words and words and more complicated words. So if we don't change this, we will only be talking about past glories. We have the fundamentals. You may have ABC, but do you have a word, do you have a sentence, do you have a language, do you have a literature? This is a different matter. The alphabets don't make a language. Yes, they're integral to language making, but you knowing 26 alphabets won't make English language or English literature. So right now, I feel India is in that condition. We still have the alphabets, but we don't have literature. This needs application. It's simply not going to come because in ancient times we were a great nation. It is not just going to happen, it needs striving, even if we have the fundamentals. So, first thing is not to label consciousness as Indian, it's very, very important, because I want you to understand this. Suppose somebody is American, somebody is Italian, somebody is African, whatever. Why would they want to become Indian? Why would they? It doesn't matter how great you think your nation is, why would somebody want to become Indian? It should never be projected that way. If we really want this to touch and transform the world, the most important thing is you have to take the tag of India off these things. And I would also suggest, I know it is in the diplomatic lexicon, but it's good to remove the power out of it. Because the moment you utter the word power, people understand this as conquest or control or capture. Well, the power of this nation has been that we captivated people with individual genius. This has been our strength and this has been our weakness, that there has been a phenomenal sense of individual genius but not enough organization, for which we have paid a price, a terrible price. But today, in the name of organization, we should not try to organize something which is of just national identity but not of value to every human being on the planet. We have the substance, substrata, but it has to grow. It has to come up, it has to bear flower and fruit, otherwise substrata is not going to be respected in the world. Okay, you had great history, so what about it, you know? Today how you are is a whole thing. Now, coming to soft power or, you know, reaching out to the world through culture, spirituality, music, dance and various other things, I think the most important thing in my opinion is that we should remove the tag Indian from it. I think the only one aspect which has dropped the tag Indian is yoga, and that's what has gone furthest in the world, because there's no Indian tag on it. Somebody says, let's do Indian yoga. Why would somebody do it? Let's just do yoga. Somebody is willing to do it. Yoga for your well-being, they're willing to do. Do Indian yoga. Why will I do Indian yoga? If I'm not Indian, why will I do Indian yoga? So, when we use the word soft, it's a nice word but power is a very dominating word. So, developing individual genius has been the hallmark of this culture. We produced tremendous human beings. Well, the yogic lore talks about it like this: we produced those kind of human beings that gods were envious of. That kind of human beings, that kind of genius. I think that's what we should focus on, rather than trying to push India out, because it's not going to work like that. If you generate that kind of people in every generation, let us see who can ignore the nation. They cannot.
Well, I agree entirely with you. You know, consciousness, what the world is looking for now is a universal approach, you know, consciousness is certainly universal. Now, there's an interesting scientific perspective on it. When quantum mechanics, which is the deepest theory of physics, was created in the 1930s, one of its two creators was the Austrian physicist Erwin Schrödinger. And he claims in his autobiography that he was inspired by the Upanishadic Mahavakya, I am Atma Brahma, to come up with this concept of superposition, because that is one of the two central concepts in quantum mechanics. And the creators of quantum mechanics believed that there are two aspects to reality. One is the physical world, but paralleling that or complementary to that is consciousness. So there was a lot of talk about all of this and discussion by the sages, you know, in Europe or India and Asia and everywhere else. But after the Second World War, there was a kind of a reaction from the physics community. They said, no, consciousness itself should be emergent on physics. And that's where they failed, because if you look at mind, you know, electrical activity in the brain as leading to consciousness, which it does, of course, you know, our personal self-consciousness, but that cannot explain phenomena such as the great genius Srinivasa Ramanujan coming up with formulas which had no historical context, which are still being shown to be correct. So there is a lot of anomalous or creative phenomena which lead us to believe or accept or certainly explore further what is consciousness and how is it that each human being, because all human beings, no matter where they are, or all sentient beings have the capacity to reach into that riches which lie within each person. So then the challenge is, if each person is a mind of infinite creativity, how do you obtain all this potential within you? So, Sadhguru, what would you say to that?
See, as we sit here, well, this platform that we are sitting on, earlier there were 5 people, now just 2 of us, maybe later there'll be nobody. Physical is like a platform. We are mistaking the platform for the act. So in this is the whole problem. We have studied the platform substantially, we know everything about it, but what place on it is something we've completely missed because our focus is totally on the physical nature of the existence. As you sit here, this is my body, that's your body. Do what you want when we're alive. This is my body, that's your body, this cannot be mixed. Only when we are buried in the same land, then we realize a point, but till then, this is my body, that's your body, this is my mind, that's your mind. Here and there we may overlap, but this is my mind, that's your mind. But there is no such thing as my life and your life. This is a living cosmos. You have captured a little bit, I have captured a little bit. It is like children blowing soap bubbles. That's my bubble, this is your bubble. My bubble is bigger than yours, competition. But when it goes poop, there is no such thing as my air and your air. So, how much life does an individual capture in a given life will determine the scope and the spread of one's life. The very word yoga means this. Yoga means union, which is essentially about consciously obliterating the boundaries of your individuality. If you manage to obliterate the boundaries of your individuality consciously, your bubble becomes bigger and bigger, you capture more and more life. You did not capture more knowledge, you did not capture more this and that, you captured more life. Because you captured more life, it is a larger life than every other life. So in this will find expression in a million different ways as it is necessary for those times. See, what is valuable in one time may not be valuable in another time. So, maybe, I'm just saying, suppose you captured an enormous amount of life, if you came here 1,000 years ago, maybe you would be a great warrior. Today, maybe you're a great professor, tomorrow it may be something else. Whatever is the requirement of the time, it will find expression because this is not knowledge. This is… see, today's education and today's way of looking at things, fundamentally the way science has grown is with memory. Memory is everything. Memory is the nature of physical existence, in the sense, you have a body which has taken this form, human form right now. No matter what you eat, it never gets confused. If you eat dog food for 3 days, you won't become a dog, because there is substantial evolutionary memory and genetic memory that do whatever you want, still it remembers that this is this kind of a creature, it'll never get confused about it. Similarly, there is karmic memory and conscious, subconscious, various kinds of memories. We will… essentially, right now who you are as a physical self is an accumulation of phenomenal amount of memory. You may not remember consciously how your great-grandfather 10 generations ago looked like, but his nose is sitting on your face right now. Yes or no? How your forefathers were 1,000,000 years ago, even the skin tone, it remembers. So this is all a consequence of a certain dimension of memory. There is a dimension of intelligence in the existence and within us, which is completely free of memory. It is this dimension of intelligence which we call as chitta, which today is loosely going around as consciousness. Where there is no memory, there cannot be a boundary. That is you, this is me, simply because this is one kind of memory and that's another kind of memory. Memory is a great possibility, but memory is also a boundary. What you remember and what I remember determines who I am and who you are. Who is your friend, who is not your friend, who is a stranger here, who is your enemy, all this by memory, isn't it? So a dimension of intelligence where there is not an iota of memory, this is what we are referring to as chitta, which in English language it's going all over the place in the name of consciousness.
Beautiful. There is another way that in Vedanta all this is described, that just as you have one outer sun, which if it gets reflected in 1,000,000 different pots with water, you'll see the reflection of the sun. So likewise, there is one consciousness, and in each one of our minds is the same consciousness which gets covered by your habits, which separate you from who you really are. So there's a covering, and this discovery of yourself by going within is in a certain sense removal of all these avarans or coverings that reside within you, which through habit and through education. You can also say that while education gives us great capacity to do certain things and understand certain things, it also separates us from our true self, and therefore ultimately true education is to go beyond what you had been taught. And therefore, in fact, I was talking to a great musician, and what she said was that most of her career after her education has been to unlearn what she had been taught by her guru. Now, there's another very interesting relationship to all of this, which the Vedas speak about, which is the binding between the outer and the inner, that the outer cosmos and the inner cosmos are connected. You have the outer sun, you have the inner sun. The outer sun is 108 times the diameter of the earth away from the earth. The outer sun is 108 times the diameter of the sun away from the earth. The moon is 108 times the diameter of the moon away from the earth. And this was represented, this whole idea of this binding between the outer and the inner was represented in, say, 108 names of the god or 108 names of the goddess, so that when you did the Japamala 108 times, you were making a symbolic journey from earth, which is your body, to the inner sun. So it brings in a lot of the very many different practices and techniques which inform people depending upon what their temperament is, you know, what you do, what kind of a practice you should do in order to perform that uncovering which hides your true self from you. So, I'd like to have your take on all of this. The practices, you know, some people prefer to do mantra or dhyana or other disciplines in order to find that silver or gold which resides within each human being. So what kind of advice would you give to the audience here?
I'm generally not given to give any advices to anybody, because in my life I never took any advice from anyone. Nor do I offer advice in that sense, but in terms of practices, I know what you're saying. See, who we are here as a physical creature, we are a consequence of the way this solar system is designed, which you were trying to articulate in some way. We know this very well, that if our mothers' bodies were not in sync with the cycles of the moon, we wouldn't be born. The 28-day cycle of the moon and the female body cycles, without it we wouldn't be here. So this is the shortest cycle that happens within the human system. All yogic practices are designed to slowly move you away from this 28-day cycle and take you to the largest possible cycle. The largest possible cycle that happens in the solar system is a 12.25-year solar cycle. So always the effort is to move to a larger cycle. If let us say your 12.25-year cycle, when I say 12.25-year cycle, if you pay attention to your lives closely, you will see in a certain period of time, some people may be 12 years, some people may be 6 years, 3 years, 18 months, 6 months, 3 months or 28 days. If you observe your life both in terms of events and your experiences, these cycles will be happening in your system. If you want to take charge of your destiny, you must be conscious of the cycles. If you ride shorter cycles, you will go through lot of disturbance. Let's say you're on a 3-month cycle, this means you're psychologically very fragile and available to so many things. Well, we have largely everywhere in the world, not just in this country, have recognized the moon and madness as one thing, you know lunar and loony are about the same things, because the short cycle suggests that you're psychologically off. If you go towards the largest cycle, you become absolutely stable and your destiny is 100% decided by you. So, different cycles are related to various aspects of the solar system as a whole, because the solar system is like a potter's wheel which has crafted us. It's a very beautiful thing that Adiyogi speaks 15,000 years ago. Today modern neurology is having similar conversations. Modern neurologists are saying, it is a dream for every human being, why can't we have a little bigger brain so that we can become super capable? There was a time when the world was very physical, everybody dreamed of a big body. Now people are dreaming of a big brain. So one thing that the neurologists are saying, which is so uncanny, that they're just repeating what Adiyogi said 15,000 years ago. They said, the two ways to enhance the brain capacity is, you have to increase the size of the neuron, that's one way. Or you have to pack it with more neurons. If you pack it with more neurons, there will be no clarity. There may be intelligence, but there will be no clarity. You see this in a lot of children. Today, unfortunately, all these children get labeled as ADD, ADH and whatever, all the alphabets in the language. No, this is a normal process. Some children come with extra neuronal activity. All you need to do is put them to substantial physical activity, playing, swimming, climbing, everything if they do, it'll adjust itself. Instead of that, you put them on medication today because certain industries have to run. Unfortunately, a large number of children, millions of children are going on medication at a very early age simply because they are trapped in apartments where there is no activity, so the only way is to fix them with medication. So, if you pack too many neurons, there will be lack of clarity. If you increase the size of the neuron, the amount of power that it needs or energy that it needs will be too much. Right now, as you sit here in a restful state, more than 20% of your energy is consumed by your brain. Such a big body, such a small brain, but this consumes more than 20% of your energies. If you increase the size of the neurons, the amount of energy that it'll demand will be unsustainable for a body like this. So they said this is the reason why you cannot increase the size of the brain. The Saptarishis over 15,000 years ago asked the same question to Adiyogi, why can't we increase the capacity of the human being? He said, in the present solar system, this is all you can evolve. If you have to evolve more than what you are right now, something about the solar system has to change. If some dramatic change happens in the solar system, you may develop a higher level of possibility. But instead of trying to evolve physically, it is better you evolve consciously, because if you go consciously, there is no limit. So he said, I don't know if this conference is open to stories, but He went out to say, if you go through the means of your physical structure, there are 112 ways. But if you go beyond the physical structure, as many atoms in the existence, that many ways are there. So what he is saying is that if you leave the platform and you go up, then there is no limit on you. If you want to stay on the platform, then there is a limit on you. So, the whole effort of human consciousness is to move from a shorter cycle, which is totally psychologically and physiologically controlled, to a larger cycle where the influence of body and mind recedes considerably.
Well, let me turn the question, the next question to one of the most pressing problems, at least in the views of many thinkers right now, and this is the problem of artificial intelligence. There are people who are afraid that with AI and machines, most jobs will disappear.
Isn't that great? That means we are on a vacation, huh?
Right. So what do you think? Because even if there is universal basic income, the state will take care of people, but that is probably not going to bring happiness to people because people want something to do.
No, because they're like donkeys right now, they have to do something.
Right, yeah. So
They want some hard work.
So what do you think is going to happen? Are we going to have a dystopic age, or how do you think society will be able to deal with this unfolding crisis?
Don't ever please call it a crisis, it's a wonderful thing happening. Let me tell you my first experience with this. I was 13 years of age and I went to school only when it was absolutely must. So one day somebody showed me a flatbed calculator. Those days there were Sony calculators and Panasonic calculators. These are the only two things available in India. Sony was supposed to be more expensive, 125 rupees. Panasonic was 90 to 100 rupees. So everybody bought Panasonic. Somebody brought this and showed it to me. They did tuk, and the answer came. First thing that came to me is, why the hell are they torturing me in the math class when there is a damn thing like this? Day in and day out they're trying to teach you addition and multiplication. When this stupid machine can do it, what is the problem? I said, why can't they make something like this for mathematics, science, biology, every damn thing, so that I can do what I want to do? So, right now it's unfortunately, they're inviting me to all kinds of artificial intelligence conferences. I asked them, why are you inviting me? I am not an artificial intelligence. Why me? They're saying, Sadhguru, we don't know what to do, we'll lose our jobs. I said, isn't it fantastic? Every day you're cribbing to go to your job. With a miserable face, you're going to your work. If you have nothing to do, you can do what you really want to do in your life. Isn't it a dream world? Hello? Artificial intelligence and robots doing most of the work on the planet is the golden age for consciousness. That is when human beings will focus. In between, as you said, in between, people who have grown up like donkeys, they believe that hard work is the only way. They don't understand life is about making it profound and pleasant and profound. That's what it's about. Making this life as pleasant as possible and as profound as possible. This is not about doing donkey's work. Why don't you complain that, why is there a truck, why don't I carry it on my head and go? All the load in the world. Why is there a ship, why don't I put it on my back and swim across the oceans? Why are you not complaining about it? Because you're enjoying the benefit. This also you will enjoy after some time. I'm sure you know the workers' unions and others really protested at one time when machines came, isn't it? They didn't want cranes to be used in the ports, do you know this? They wanted to carry it themselves. So the same thing today, academics are talking about it because they want to carry it on their head. No, everything that you can know, what you study in 25 years and earn a PhD can go on this big machine. I think it's a great time coming. This is the time when human beings can really focus on what is consciousness. Because right now we're just busy how to earn a living, endlessly. So, artificial intelligence is a tremendous possibility because unfortunately, we are celebrating just memory. Today's education is all about memory. Just remember something and puke it on the answer sheet, you are number one. Hello? It doesn't mean intelligence in any sense, it doesn't mean competence in any sense, just memory. Well, today your phone can carry more memory than all the teachers put together in your school. That's a great thing.
What about the idea that machines themselves will become conscious? And if they do become conscious, they already are more, skillful than us in speed of computations and so on. So if machines become conscious, they might probably have nothing to do or no use for human beings. So where do you think this is all going? or do you think machines will not become conscious?
See, right now, you can train a man to go and kill 100 people. Similarly, you can train a machine to go and kill 100 people. Maybe a machine can do it more efficiently, so maybe 10,000 people instead of 100. Well, that's already happened, isn't it? When man had to kill with a stick or a sword, how many he could kill, how many he can kill today with a machine gun or a bomb is much more, isn't it? A missile can go and kill, what is it? A missile can go and kill 1,000,000 people straight away, so already that possibility is very much there. So it may become more possible in future. Only thing is, the machine may look like a man or a woman, that's the whole thing. Day before yesterday, I was supposed to have a conversation with Sophia, who is a robo, but then she had some issue and they had to reboot her and she couldn't be she couldn't be rebooted in time for me, so I left without the conversation. So, it's not a laughing matter because she's made in that way that if she walks on the street, you can't make out whether it's a woman or a machine. And anyway, if you are operating only with your education, the kind of education you have received, you are just a machine too. Hello? Just memory. From the memory that you have gathered, you are operating. You are also just a machine. Maybe you are not manufactured in a factory, you are manufactured in your mother's womb, but very much mechanical, isn't it? Just from the information. Everything that human beings are doing right now, by gathering of data, analyzing, processing and expressing these things in so many different ways, all these things will become irrelevant because a machine can do this much better. I want you to just look back and see early 20th century, the man with the biggest muscle was the real man. Yes or no? Today, if you have very big muscles, we'll give you menial jobs. We're not going to make you a hero in the country. So, the same thing will happen. If you have a lot of memory, we will give you basic jobs because there are machines which can remember better than you. I think it's a great time coming. But in the meantime, a lot of people who lost their jobs, who are always complaining about their jobs, but they lost their jobs now and they'll die because of that. It's very unfortunate. But that's the reality of a whole lot of people because wherever they are, whatever they're doing, they're miserable, essentially.
Well, last year, a group of scientists were brought together in the US and they were asked to vote on whether ultimately, maybe 50 years from now or 100 years from now, will computers have consciousness just like human beings have? And the vote was split. 50% of these scientists believe that machines will never achieve consciousness like ours, but other 50% believe that they would. So, Sadhguru, which side are you on?
So, I think both these sides have no idea what is consciousness. they're thinking consciousness is a certain kind of moral behavior. Conscience is different. Conscience is a socially developed thing. What kind of things that you feel proud about, what you feel guilty about in India, they may not feel proud and guilty about it in another country, because conscience is a socially evolved thing. So we can develop machines which have a conscience. Even now the Google lady says, "I'm sorry, I'm not able to get it." So she has some sense about it, isn't it? So she will learn more of your etiquette and you can train her to be Indian when she's in India, to be American when she's in America, to be Spanish when she's in Spain or wherever. You will have trouble adjusting, but the machine will have no trouble adjusting. The moment the GPS location says you're in India, she will behave like an Indian, she will like the dosa and everything else, all right? So I'm saying this is everything that can happen by accumulation of memory will be done by the machine, 100%. Now, consciousness is not that dimension. So whether they vote for this or that, it makes no difference, because consciousness is not an academic study. The very fact that you think you can study it shows that there is no consciousness, there is only learning. Learning is of memory, isn't it?
A question which is relevant especially in the Indian context. Indian education, the way it's evolved in the last 40, 50 years…
There's no Indian education in India.
Well, in schools, whatever…
No, I'm saying there's no Indian education in India.
Right. So my question is, if India has had a great tradition related to adhyatmic or spiritual knowledge, and the youth have no idea as to what that tradition was, and therefore they believe that none of that existed. So what kind of a challenge, in your opinion, it is for educators and for parents and for others to inform in a way so that a proper dialogue can be set up between those who know and those who think that all of it is just make-believe? So what do you think, what kind of a challenge that is?
So we must understand this. This population that you refer to as youth is never really interested in the past. It is as you age, you get interested in history because you're also a little bit of history. Youth are always interested in a tomorrow, they're interested in a future. So, how to generate interest in future without losing connection with the cultural background of who we are? Not because it's our culture, this must be very clear. That's why I said you never label consciousness as Indian, not because it's Indian, simply because it's valuable, simply because it's valuable for every human being. This is the only culture which has been reasonably consciously crafted. No culture is 100% conscious, because what mess they did yesterday is today's culture, what mess you do today is tomorrow's culture. Nobody can really control and calibrate culture. But if you look at various cultures on the planet, probably this is the nearest to calibrated culture that you can have on the planet. There has been a certain amount of calibration, there has been a certain amount of push towards being a conscious culture. If we have to do this, there's only one thing we have to do. If you instill in everybody the highest goal in your life is freedom, liberation, mukti, moksha, just keep this one thing. Rest of the society will arrange itself around it. And in today's world, freedom is something that everybody likes, they like this word. In America, they like this word. And their idea of freedom is, right now, I will eat what I want, I'll drink what I want, I'll copulate when I feel like it, I'll do whatever I want. This is their idea of freedom. So you just have to translate this. After all, you're yielding to your compulsions and thinking it's freedom. A compulsive behavior is not freedom. Freedom means I'm beyond my compulsions, that is freedom. So you just have to translate these words little better, and youth are always interested. I must tell you this, Never before. When I was growing up, when I was 15, 16 years of age, nobody could have made me listen to any damn spiritual talk, no way. Simply not possible. But today, you won't believe this, if I go somewhere to schools, 12, 15-year-olds, Sadhguru, Sadhguru, they're screaming. I said, you idiots, how do you know me? They say, we're listening to your YouTube talks. I said, what? 15-year-olds, boys and girls below 15 years of age, they're listening to spiritual talks, not by force from parents, they themselves are searching it out and listening. When did this ever happen on this planet? This never happened before, isn't it? So this is happening. Just a few months ago, we launched a program called Youth and Truth across the universities. You should see the kind of response. The response is immense, believe me, immense. Never before this was possible. So this is because it is in the nature of the youth to seek truth. It is in the nature of this culture that we seek truth. It doesn't matter, Shiva said something, Rama said something, Krishna said something, Buddha said something, but we have to seek our own truth. This is the nature of the culture, we just have to bring it back. Don't try to tell them, you had a great culture, you must do as it was done 1,000 years ago, it's not going to work. You must make everybody a seeker of truth and seeker of liberation. If this one thing, if you manage, rest of it will naturally arrange itself in its own way. How it arranges itself tomorrow may not look like how it was 5,000 years ago. They may be dressed in blue denims which are torn all over the place, all right? But they're spiritual in their own way, because nobody wants to be bound, everybody wants to be free. This is an intrinsic need in a human being, that he wants to be free. You just have to translate the word freedom in its right context. Right now, unfortunately, most people understand yielding to compulsive nature is freedom.
We were told that the last 20 minutes will be devoted to questions from the audience. So, I don't know how exactly we're going to do it. Perhaps you can just shout out your question.
Soft power, if it is considered as the content and the hard power as container, what in your views should be the metallurgy and composition of this container so that it is globally accepted and beneficial and also maintains the socio-economic balance at the global level? Thank you, sir.
It's for you or it's for him or? Oh. See, you can deliver the air that people need to breathe in tanks as they do it in a hospital for a sick person, or you can expose them to the atmosphere. The atmosphere around the planet is not in any container, but it stays with the earth always, it never goes away. It's just a bubble of air, suppose it goes away tomorrow, what do you do? Hello? You never thought about that? This bubble of air which we have as atmosphere, suppose this bubble just went away, we're finished, isn't it? So it's very important, culture never comes in a container. A container culture nobody wants, that can only be an imposition and that's going to create negative reactions. It must just come like the air. Then people will naturally breathe and enrich by it without knowing. You don't know what you're breathing right now, isn't it? Exactly. Maybe in Delhi you know, but you really don't know what exactly you're breathing, but it's nourishing you, so it's fine. So culture should happen like this, like atmosphere, it just spreads around and everybody breathes it and it becomes a part of them. If it comes packaged in any sense, packaged culture is bound to die, because culture can never be preserved. You only evolve it in so many ways so that it's a living thing. If you try to preserve, that means it's a dead thing, isn't it? If you try to keep the dead things alive, well, it'll cost a lot of life, nobody would want it, everybody would experience it as imposition. This is, I would say, one big mistake that India is making, that we are trying to package it as some kind of a container. This is because we have too much pride in the past and we are not seeing what happened in the last 1,000 years. We must also look at that. There's nothing to be proud of, all right? There's really nothing to be proud of in the last 1,000 years. We're only talking about the Vedic time, some other time. Even then there were terrible things, but wonderful things also happened. But the most important thing is, don't try to forget your immediate past. Today you are who you are largely because of your immediate past, not because of the glorious past of another time, isn't it? So we should not forget that. So we need to understand this, that we have yielded to all kinds of things simply because one segment of the population is trying to stick on to the container culture. Another segment of the population is seeking freedom from this because they feel all their suffering happened because of this culture. Really, one segment of the people really think all our problems are because of our culture. We're too proud of our past and there's no future kind of feeling. So the important thing is we must understand the only significant thing about this nation which made us stand out is, if you travel particularly in… all these countries are becoming ruined today, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, all these places if you go, you will see hundreds of women, even today named as Hind. I was just surprised when I traveled in the region. I said, why are you called Hind? They said, we take the name of India. I said, why? Why is this our tradition? Hundreds and hundreds of women will be named as Hind, even today. Because the integration of the culture 8,000–10,000 years ago was so big. And why are they proud of this culture? Because they felt the best things came from Hind. Now, today, I think the number of Bharat Kumars and Bharatis are going down tremendously in the country isn't it so? There was a time maybe just post-independence, there were a lot of Bharatis and Bharat Kumars and all kinds of people, but now there are not so many. Essentially because the pride will come with effectiveness. If there is no effectiveness and just big verbosity, pride is gone. Once pride is gone, then we have ruined everything. If human beings have no pride in what they are, they won't strive. A human being cannot strive unless there's pride about who I am and what I am. So to instill this pride, we must understand, if you go back in history, there were times when this country was over 600 political entities. Most of the time around 100 to 150 entities. Even when it was so, the rest of the world referred to this land as Hindustan or Bharat. Why is it? Simply because they found us as really strange people. In the sense, we were the only nation or we were the only culture on the planet who did not have the god anywhere. All the people that we worshipped are people who walked this land at some time, who walked this geography at some time. We worship them only because of their qualities, not because of something else. They were born like us, they lived like us, they went through all the troubles and tribulations of what a human being goes through and much more drama than our lives. But we were seekers, we were never believers. This set us apart so distinctly that they refer to the entire land as Bharat or Hindustan because we were a land of seekers. I think in the last 60–70 years, people have been hacking at this one thread of seeking which has united such a complex culture where every 50 kilometers if you drive, we speak differently, eat differently, look different, wear different kind of clothes, everything is different, but still this has been one nation for thousands of years, only because of this one thread that we have been seekers. That's all we need to bring back, that we become seekers of truth and seekers of liberation. That's the only way, not by forceful integration, a loose chain of things. That is the only way you can keep Indians together. You can't do it by force, you cannot put it in a container, no. This one thing, if you bring not only into India, into every human being, the highest thing in your life is knowing the truth and becoming free. If we instill this in the world, you will have the soft power just everywhere, like atmosphere.
Okay, well, here.
Thank you very much, Sadhguru. What do you think about the jewel of the Indian culture, the Sanskrit language, and how an understanding of that can help us to moksha, help us understand Aham Brahmasmi, the truth?
See, the sound, any sound is a reverberation. Sound is an existentially real thing. Words are made up in our minds. Words and meanings exist only in human mind. There is no meaning anywhere in the universe. Only in human mind is looking for meaning. But the sound exists. So the significant aspect of Sanskrit language is that probably it is the closest language to describe… See, every form has a sound attached to it. Every sound has a form attached to it. If you feed a sound into an oscilloscope, you will get a certain pattern depending upon its frequency, amplitude and other dimensions of the sound. So, every sound has a form attached to it and every form has a sound attached to it. So, the relationship between the form and the sound was probably, I wouldn't say it's perfect, but brought closest in Sanskrit language. That is, if you utter a word in that language, you are relating to the form that you're referring to. Rest of the languages are all made for the sake of communication. I say one sound and you understand, it's a conspiracy between you and me. Right now, English language is a conspiracy between you and me. I say one sound and you understand this is the word, but you have to learn it. But the significance of Sanskrit language is, if you listen to nature, if you pay attention to the reverb of the nature, you would know the language, because the form and the sound are very closely related. In this context, it's very significant. It's a real tragedy that it's been largely lost. But at the same time, today the world and the youth and the young people want something as easy as possible. If you go into the Indian languages, which are all Sanskrit-based except Tamil, we have the major alphabets and the minor alphabets put together over 200 alphabets. It's too complicated. Now, if you go to English language, it's only 26 alphabets you have to learn. Just to learn our local alphabets, we spend so much time as children learning the alphabet. So today, just 26 alphabets, but the language is very limited in the sense, there's a classic video going around in the WhatsApp and everything where a teacher in the northeast, somewhere in northeastern part of India, is teaching English in a class. The two words that are written are nature and future. She is reading as na tu re, shu tu re. Because in Indian languages, if you read by the alphabet, you will get the right pronunciation. In English language, if you read by the alphabet, you will get something else. So na tu re and shu tu re is the correct way of reading the language. So, but people have come to a place even, their idea of literature is 140 characters now. So now bringing back Sanskrit language is a bit of a challenge, but we should not give it up. For those groups of people who are interested, definitely we must keep it on. In our Sanskriti school, all the children converse in Sanskrit language very effortlessly. They can speak to each other in Sanskrit language all the time. And they'll pick it up so easily, young children. We have to keep this language because I believe that sometime in future, human beings will have the intelligence to understand what is profound and what is on the surface. When artificial intelligence comes and takes over the mundane activity, I think human beings will invest on something more profound. Please take the microphone.
You can take this.
So this is a little bit of a difficult question and I don't know if the forum…
Question is difficult or answer? Okay.
It'll probably put you on the block, but let's… anyways. So, I try mantras and one actually worked out for me very well. And I felt that the mantra actually was so powerful that it actually played out as an effect for something which is unexplainable. And I've been using that a lot, and am I getting a free pass in life?
Are you?
Am I unfairly getting a free pass? Sometimes I wonder that is it a good idea to do that? I can name the mantra if that…
No, keep your secret.
And is that an unfair pass in easing out things? Seems… I sometimes feel guilty about it, so I don't know. That's one question, and then the other one was…
One at a time, I'm a simple guy.
Okay, well, we have time for only 2 more questions. Maria? Yeah, Maria Bar.
Sadhguru, you were saying that the youth is very much interested in truth. And from my own experience, this is true. But I grew up in a culture where I was told what is the truth. I mean, we were told you don't have to think about the truth because we cannot know it. God had to tell it, and He has told it in His revelation. So, should India not be more powerful, use its power to tell the world that this is not okay, actually, to enforce something which is not the truth? Because obviously there are 2 truths. Christianity says we have only the truth. Islam says, no, this is only the truth. So, and both of them put India down. They don't want that the world knows anything about India. So should India not stand up much stronger and tell them?
Please. Well, see, we must understand this. Whatever we are calling a soft power of culture, spirituality, art, music, if you look at it, there is no nation on the planet which has as complex music systems as we have. Every region has its own. And the complexity is so absolutely immense. How they use sounds and the mathematics involved in the sound making is too phenomenal. I'm saying this because we have a family full of artists and I'm constantly telling them, you're stuck in tradition. The very tradition which crafted these arts and sciences has become a trap. You have to step out of that. Otherwise, for example, Carnatic music is there. I'm telling you, if you pay enough attention to it, there's nothing more complex than that in the world in terms of arts. But it needs a cultivated audience. Somebody else who comes and sits here will get bored in the first 5 minutes, they'll want to leave. But if you do jing, 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 everybody will sit because the body moves with it. So that cultivation has to happen means you have to step out of that container he was talking about. See, containers were created to protect the material that's inside. But if you create a container that you don't have a key to open, then you're not protecting it, you're imprisoning it. So right now, a whole lot of things like this are in India right now. We have things of tremendous value which we locked and kept for safety and we've lost the key. We don't know how to open the lock. It's right there, but it doesn't come out. So, about youth seeking truth, it's very natural for them, as you said. People have been told, this is the truth, this is a commandment. The best thing about India is this, even when the so-called divine entities came, they could not give us a commandment because Indians are full of questions. We were trekking in Tibet and we had people from over 40 countries and one Indian person who lives in United States stood up to ask a question and the question went on for over 8 minutes. Question inside a question, inside a question, inside a question, like that. All the other, Indians are okay, but the rest of the people are, what kind of question is this? Then I said, see, this is an Indian issue. We've spent thousands of years asking questions and questions and questions. We can make a question itself an hour long. Then one Chinese lady who was traveling with us, she said, yes, Sadhguru, I worked in United Nations for 23 years. Only Indians ask questions, nobody else asks questions. You just see, Shiva came and he opened his mouth and his wife asked him 1,000,000 questions. Krishna, after many years of waiting, obviously he couldn't talk to Arjuna for a long time, obviously. He chose an extreme moment of war. There he tries to teach him something, the guy asks him hundreds of questions. So, as I said earlier, this has been a land of seeking. But rest of the world or not really rest of the world, certain part of the world took to commandments, this is it. If you say this is not it, you're dead, that's all. It's a very effective method. Yes. See, there are two ways of handling a question. Either you answer the question or kill the questioner. If I answer your question, you'll come up with one more question. But if I take care of you, there is no more question. So they adopted this methodology. Anybody who asks a question is dead. So after some time, the whole society feared to ask questions. See, people are very proudly talking about secret schools in Europe and secret schools in Middle East. Why were schools secret? Because you would be dead otherwise. Hello? Why is a school, a place of learning, a secret? Because if you learn something that I don't approve, you're dead. That's why. There are no secret schools in India, all kinds of things were done. In the same generation, all kinds of things were done, most unthinkable things were done, but as long as people are in pursuit, other people said, okay, we don't like that, so they kept away and they pursued something else. But there never was persecution because we created a culture of seeking, not of believing. The moment you believe something, see, we must understand this. The moment we believe something, let's say I believe something and you believe something else, both of us are friends and everything is fine, but when it really comes to the crux, I will kill you. Because I believe this is it and you believe that's it. So there is no way out of that. So, we are still in that mode, but one tremendous thing that's happening in the world is heavens are collapsing, you know. If Yesterday I was with a group of nearly 9,000 people in Bangalore who were with me for 2-day program, and I just asked, how many of you believe you're going to heaven? Only about 5 hands went up in 9,000, okay? So, are you hell candidates, I asked them. They said, no. Oh, we don't know. Oh, in the previous generation if you'd asked this question, 80% of the hands would have gone up. So heavens are collapsing, which is a very good thing for seeking because heavens are collapsing means people… what heaven means is that there is a better place than this. This is a tragedy. This is the worst thing that human beings have been, trained to believe. The worst thing is there is a better place than this, so you can make a mess out of this and go there. You can make a hell out of yourself here and go to another heaven and live well forever, okay? What is there in heaven if you really look at it? Hindu heaven, food is very good. Really. In another heaven, there are those white-gowned ladies floating in the clouds. If you like that kind of ambience, you can go there. In another heaven, you will encounter virgin problems. If that's what you want, you can go there. But to go there, the basic quality is you must die. The qualification is you must be dead. And once you're dead, fortunately, we either burn you or bury you or cut you and feed you to the birds, depending on your culture. The one significant thing, ecologically significant thing that everybody will do is put their bodies back into the earth. Very good thing to do, except Elon Musk. So you went to heaven, you don't have a body, you left your body here and went to heaven. Now what do you do with good food and virgins? So I'm saying, right now for the first time in the history of humanity, more number of human beings are beginning to think for themselves, especially women. 100 years ago, most women were not allowed to think. The whole structure of most societies in the world were such, they're just not allowed to think for themselves. For the first time, men and women are beginning to think. Whether thinking right or wrong is not the point, they're beginning to think. Once they begin to think, a logical structure evolves in their mind. Once a logical structure evolves in their mind, anything that's illogical will collapse. So heavens are collapsing. Because of this, you will see an enormous increase in consumption of alcohol and drug abuse. This is because there is no better place to go. Right here you want to do everything. So you will see this rising, but at the same time, this is the time consciousness can also rise, because certain number of people will look inward as to what is the solution. So how much of the human population will we turn inward is the challenge of this generation. This is the challenge for which we live. We must see maximum number of people turn inward rather than turning to chemicals. Today it is said 70% of US population is on prescription medication. Another 30% of course buys it off the back street. 38% of European population is on psychiatric medication. And the use of alcohol and drug is rising like never before. If you look at India as a society, in the last 25 years, it must have gone up by 10,000%. What do you say? There was a time when we were growing up, I've heard elders talking like this, in their house, they consume alcohol, we can't give our girls to them, they won't marry those people in whose house there is use of alcohol. Today, if you don't serve alcohol, there's no wedding in just a question of 25–30 years' time. So, it is not a moral issue. The problem is this, I'm not looking at it as a moral issue at all, because after all, everybody is seeking, you must understand this. Whether they're going to the bar or to the temple, the problem is just this, they are seeking for pleasantness and profoundness of life. Somebody thinks it's in the temple, somebody thinks it's in the bottle, but they're seeking the same thing. So the important thing is to make them see everybody seeking the same thing, but which is more sustainable, which will really work for us is the thing. In the next 30 to 40 years' time, if we don't do the right things in the next 10 to 15 years' time, there is a window of somewhere between 15 to 30 years' time. In this, if we don't make a serious turnaround in the human consciousness, you will see 90% of humanity will be on chemicals. Already to grow food we use chemicals, to purify water we use chemicals, our air is full of chemicals, water is full of chemicals, and everybody is on some kind of medication. From children to old people, everybody is on medication. When everybody is on chemicals, then it's very hard to turn those human beings around. Before a large number of human beings or a huge percentage of human beings become chemically controlled, we must turn human consciousness around. This is the responsibility of this generation. This is our time on the planet. What are we going to make out of it is our business. Please, let's make it happen.
Okay, this was the perfect summing up of what happened in this session. Our time is ended. Thank you very much, Sadhguru, and thank you everybody for being such great participants.